Don't tell my heart, my achy breaky heart. Yeah, that's my weird attempt at singing, Rach, but that's one of the questions today.
It was.
How can you sing and how can I listen and understand what song it actually is called? But I'm looking forward to this, another Q&A episode on This is Property, and lots of questions relating to property, would you believe?
Yeah, we love the Q&As.
They're very good, and the depth of them is unbelievable. We won't get through them all, but that's music for another day, isn't it? But yeah, I'm keen to dig deep into these questions, and we're actually going to spend a little bit more time on each of the questions rather than skim across them, which the listeners definitely enjoy, don't they?
I think we might have to do 2 then to get through them all.
Potentially. But anyway, let's get the first one started. So Thomas says, for wealth creation and long-term investment property with the same property price, would you advise a 3-bed, 2-bath house in a survey strata lot, 3 individual villas with 1 shared driveway with no strata fees, approximately $15,000 from the city, or 3-bed, 2-bath house green title, which is Torrens title in other states, no opportunity for subdivision at $35,000 from the city? Does land really matter that much, or location is better in this scenario? How many times do we get asked the question, type versus location, which one wins out?
So common.
What's your thoughts for Thomas?
Oh, I would tell him to talk to John.
All right, well, John's probably thinking that we need to understand everyone's situation, and this is the beauty of Q&A, right? We get to see the surface level question and not the deep dive into someone's financial situation or lifestyle requirements or what they want in the next 100 years. But I think one thing that I'm talking to a lot of clients about at the present is this gap between units and housing prices in a lot of suburbs, in probably more so capital cities. So I'm seeing discrepancies of $1 million plus between house price and unit price. Now that's the median, so it's a starting point at least. So I think that's the first part of it, is to say, well, what can I buy in the suburb that's closer in? Because invariably closer into town is generally more established. It's got more historical data. It's generally a better location than something that's further out. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, and you want to be in the thick of it if you can.
If you can, especially if you need to get into the city, which is probably less of a requirement than it was 10 years ago, 20 years ago. So there's a lot more appeal for living further out of town, which might not be as busy if we don't have to go into the city. If our schools and our family and friends are all out there, then great. But if Thomas is just purely looking at wealth creation and no emotion whatsoever, which it sounds like he is, we're saying, right, are we buying a 3-bed, 2-bath in a strata structure, or are we buying a house on its own title further out of town? Now, $35,000 from the city versus $15,000 from the city is a massive difference, isn't it? $20,000
It is.
when we're talking Melbourne, Brisbane, Sydney. It could be 40 minutes in some traffic, right? The green title, and green title's a WA thing generally, but green title is Torrens title.
I was assuming he was from WA when I saw the green title.
Yes,
yeah,
it's a WA thing, isn't it? So Torrens title is it's your own title exclusively, and you can not do what you want with it, but you don't have to ask anyone else for approval. Whereas the strata, we've done an episode on this, we do need to think about others within that complex. So I'm probably further out of town, generally speaking, but this is an interesting one because there's only 3 in the complex.
And no strata fees.
And no strata fees. I'm actually sitting on the fence with this one. I'd love to get more details in terms of what suburbs they are actually in. I would be looking at, it sounds like it's the same price we're paying for it, right? The $15,000 versus the $35,000, it's dollar for dollar. What suburbs have we got around us? And the $35,000 from the city can be vulnerable to lower socio suburbs. So if I'm buying out there and 4 or 5 suburbs around this particular suburb that I'm looking in are all lower socio, then I hang around with the lame, I end up with a limp type scenario, right? Whereas if I'm adjacent to a blue chip suburb, then I see real upside in that because it's that urban sprawl and I can't afford that blue chip suburb next to me, but I can afford this lower socio next that I want to live in or can live in, and gentrification takes place.
And when we do talk about, would you consider something, as a unit or a strata or a townhouse, you always do talk about scarcity. And if there's only 3 and there's no strata fees, it doesn't sound to me like it's something like a run-of-the-mill block with lots of things in it.
No, absolutely not. So in some ways we're getting type of property okay, location very good. There's a lot of positives to be in that situation closer into town. If you said to me, look, there's a townhouse in a complex of 25, 15K from the city versus house 35 out, I'm probably going the house.
Yeah, great. And I think there's been more and more people that have moved. I've seen more and more townhouses, units, than I ever have in the last 12 months. And I feel like it's out of necessity.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's just an affordability thing. I can't afford anything else. And this is why I'm intrigued about this house versus unit price in a particular suburb, because that when we've got $1 million, 1.2 mil difference between house and unit and the vacancy rates are low and the demand is high, does that 700, 800K unit, is that good buying? We've got to seriously look at that.
Yeah. So what would your advice be for Thomas? What's his first steps?
Well, I think it's a couple of things that I've mentioned there. The vacancy rates, it's looking at historically what the growth has been like in the area. It's looking at the suburbs around it. What are we surrounded by, both the 35 and the 15? The 15 generally is pretty good. It's looking at how do the yields differ? Because invariably the green title, larger block, it will probably come with a lower yield than the unit. So that makes the unit more appealing from a cash flow point of view. Yeah. There's no opportunity for subdivision. So that, again, leaves, we may be able to add value to the property, but not the actual block itself. Yeah. So if I'm going 35K out, I would ideally like to subdivide if I had the option to down the track.
Yeah, that's a really good tip. Well, I hope that helps. Christy says A or B. A, sell a 2-bed, 2-bath, 2-garage block of apartments in St Lucia and buy a slightly bigger 3-bed, 2-bath, 2-garage house in Mount Gravatt, Salisbury. B, keep an apartment in St Lucia, rent it to students and buy a townhouse in Mount Gravatt, Salisbury if we can't find one. Plot twist. The apartment garage floods when the Brisbane River floods.
Which is often enough.
Yeah, wow. Is that a common thing, the flooding?
Yes. Yeah, it has been in Brisbane and a lot of people are wary of that and everyone's mindset's different around that. I was saying to someone the other day, if we excluded buying in flood and bushfire zones in Australia, a lot of the East Coast would be no-go zones. Yeah. And they're some of the best blue chip property in the country. So we've got to have an appetite that allows us to sleep at night. But in saying that, there's certain suburbs in Brisbane that back onto the river that have had a couple of periods where they're flooded, right? 2011 was a major one. Yeah. So it's really, I think that's an issue because if it's an issue for you, it becomes an issue for the next person. Now, the next person might not be fussed about it and just deal with it. I know someone on the coast who's dealt with floods 5 times and they're owner-occupier and just that's just the way of life. They want to live there. So it's wild, isn't it? So, yeah, that's again, it's scenarios where we say we probably need more information, but the 2-bed, 2-bath, 2-garage in a block of 7 in St Lucia, which is in Brisbane, generally speaking, 2-bed, 2-bath give us options. It allows 2 people to live there. It allows 2 singles. It allows a couple with a child or even 2 young ones. There's a few options there, and it's a great suburb. A bigger 3-bed, 2-bath, 2-garage in Mount Gravatt. We're going a little bit further out, or Salisbury, versus keeping an apartment in St Lucia, which is the one that they've got, renting to students and buying a townhouse. Is there much of a difference? Like that's, I suppose the difference is, can we handle holding that asset as well as upgrading to the townhouse? And are we going to live in that townhouse, or is it going to be an investment? The flood thing. One thing I look at with floods is the insurance.
Yeah.
What's the insurance policy on this property? And if it's $8,000, then that's a bit nasty.
Yeah.
On that basis, it's a proceed with caution, isn't it, when you see insurance policies that high?
Just while you're talking about the insurance, I have been encouraging people more than ever to get a quote on the insurance before they negotiate on a property.
Yep.
Because there is such a big variance in the insurances now. I think that people need to understand what the insurance cost is before they actually buy a property.
And big variances within companies on the same property too. Like a lot of the mainstream insurers, and they're probably listening in because they would, right? They are quite expensive, whereas you go to the investment-specific insurers and you find that they are a lot more competitive.
Yeah.
So don't just go to your insurer, go to 4, 5, 6 others, or even get a broker involved in that space as well, which is cool. All right, so back to the question, what are we doing? Are we holding the property? Because everyone says we hold property over the next 100 years and it all goes up together and we celebrate at the end of it. But it doesn't always work out that way. We sometimes need to sell, both because we're fearful of the existing property we've got, which sounds though Christy is, as well as a cash flow thing. I'm saying generally, if cash flow wise we can hold both of them, why wouldn't we?
Yeah.
Unless we've had like building issues, it's flooding every 2 minutes and it's just giving us too much stress that it keeps us awake at night. Not worth it. Move on.
Yeah.
I'm heading towards option B, but with a caveat on what St Lucia is giving you in terms of grief.
Yeah. And if you can buy the other, if you can do the two, would you do it?
Yeah. If you could hold both, absolutely you would. I think, but and especially in Brisbane, again, we talk about in the first question the difference between the unit and house sort of prices. The vacancies are so low in all of those inner city suburbs in Brisbane, but also development is taking years, right? It's slowing down through council and services and everything. So and I was looking at some forecasting for the next sort of 3-4 years the other day for Brisbane, Sydney and Melbourne, and the forecasts of dwellings coming out of the ground aren't massive, which means we're going to have an undersupply for a good period to come.
It's been a very common theme lately.
It has, hasn't it? It's not going to change, is what I'm seeing. All right. Katia? Hi, Rach and John. Myself and hubby, no kids, are on the verge of buying our first property. We currently rent in Sydney CBD as this makes most sense for work and lifestyle. Our focus in this property would be to make as much money from it as possible long term. That being said, we don't think spending $1 million plus for a 2-bed apartment in Glebe is the best choice. So Glebe, blue chip property or blue chip suburb in Sydney, isn't it? We're torn between a townhouse / smaller house within an hour of the CBD, maybe the Shire, down south in the Shire, that we could live in for a year, but this would more likely be at or over the $1 million mark versus spending $800 on a 3-bed house further out in Newcastle / Wollongong.
North or south?
North or south, yes. Similar distance, aren't they? Well, actually, Newcastle's further. The downside to this we would not be able to live in the property for the first year. It would be purely a buy to become an investment house right away. What are the pros and cons of choosing option 2? What are your thoughts, Raj?
Yeah, well, you really need to decide of whether you want to buy to live in or whether you're going to buy to invest. And they're two very different things. And I think more than ever, people are choosing to keep renting where they want to live and they're buying elsewhere. In the last 5 years, I've seen this more than I've seen it in the 15 years previous, which is people are choosing lifestyle and renting and buying other properties. So I think the first thing I would do would be to sit down and work out your why. Yeah. Why are you buying this property? If it's because you want a home for your family, it's going to be a very different decision than if you're looking for what your, I guess, investment strategy is. Are you buying for investment or are you buying to live in? And I think if you know your why, you'll be able to narrow that down a little bit more. What do you think, John?
Yeah, I think this has got first homeowner concessions written all over it. We're maybe thinking about, can we save on the stamp duty? Because in New South Wales, 800 is the cap, right, where we pay no stamp duty.
Yeah, it's higher now, yeah.
So going and buying in Newcastle and Wollongong for 800 is great. We save stamp duty, but we can't live in it. So we're saying, well, okay, we go and buy in Sydney for $1 million. We're paying full tote odds on the stamp duty anyway, aren't we? So, I think the goal for Katya is that we want to live in a property, but we've also got wealth creation as the forefront of our decision making. Just the wording of it says, well, I could go and buy in Glebe in an apartment, but is that going to be a rubbish decision for wealth creation? Yeah. So I think you're right. It's that balance. It's like, okay, I'm living in a property. What's most important? Is it lifestyle? As in, I live in Glebe and I work in the city and it's an easy commute? Or is it wealth creation? I live in the Shire down at Cronulla and I do the long commute, but I've got a better asset.
Yeah.
Which one wins out in the end? And sometimes, I hate to say it, but sometimes wealth creation is second. And lifestyle for us right now is first, right? We've got no kids, so we've got the ability to have hopefully a bit more time on our hands. Does that mean we want to use that time by commuting from Cronulla? Not sure. I mean, it's a good stint.
I notice you've gone Newcastle to Wollongong. You've missed the Central Coast. That's a gem. That's a gem right in your price point.
800 in Newcastle and Wollongong and even the Central Coast, we're not getting much, to be honest, are we?
No. But the $1 million mark you are? Yeah,
like 3-bedroom house in Newcastle, not a lot of options in good suburbs there, nor Wollongong.
No.
So that would probably be my least because it feels as though you want something to buy to live in. And she mentions work and lifestyle, which are a focus. But, yeah, the number one priority for her is to make as much money long term. So if that's the case, we really want to we're going to have to make some sacrifices. Now, again, coming back to the first part, the first question is like, okay, we've got this discrepancy between unit and house price. We've got low vacancy rates. If I'm buying a 2-bedroom in Glebe, ideally I want it to be 2-bath as well. I want it to have a car space, and ideally it's in a quiet street and in a small complex, ideally. Yeah. Now, can we get all that for $1 million plus? If we can, it gives us lifestyle, it gives us a reasonable asset, and we're in our own home. If we can't get that, that's where that smaller house may be a better option.
Yeah.
Townhouse is an interesting one. What do you think of townhouses?
I see a lot of townhouses, especially closer into the city. I think it depends on how they're structured. So is there a lot in the complex or are there a few in the complex?
Yeah, and we had this text off yesterday, didn't we? In preparation. Because you're right. You could have 2 townhouses, both Torrens titled on the one block, and it's essentially your own townhouse versus having 6 in a complex where they're strata titled.
Yeah, I would call that a duplex.
Yeah, that's right. But they're a townhouse, aren't they?
Yeah.
Townhouse/duplex, depending on the lingo.
We went into semantics yesterday.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, that's right. Interesting question and great question and very common question that I'm seeing anyway.
Yeah, what I wouldn't get caught in would be the first home buyer benefits. I think that when you're looking long-term strategy, take that first home buyer benefit out when you're making a big decision.
Yeah, I think they're gone, aren't they, really? We're at that sort of price point that she's looking at. So, yeah, hopefully that helps catch her.
Excellent.
All right, we'll take a break and then we'll come back and do some more Q&A stuff.
Excellent.
This is Property is brought to you by Sphere Home Loans. Sphere Home Loans is a mortgage broker that helps our listeners all around Australia. So, if you want to get into your first home sooner, looking at upgrading, an additional property, or want your current mortgage reviewed, just search Sphere Home Loans or click the link in the show notes, and their dedicated brokers will be able to help you wherever you are. If you are, however, after personal financial advice, don't get it from a podcast. If you would like help based on your own personal situation, head over to moneypodcast.com.au, click Get Help, and we'd be happy to introduce you to one of our trusted professionals. That's moneypodcast.com.au and click Get Help.
Joanne says, we would welcome your experienced opinions. We are in our mid and late 30s with 2 young kids, PPOR and IP, 55% LVR in WA, with the future goal to buy 2 to 3 more IPs. Great. Yeah. We have the ability to pay down our PPOR in the next 3 to 5 years. The idea is to do this, then invest in the next IP, or do we use the equity from IP now to buy the next IP? This will give us more firing power for the future plan, and we will save lots in interest on PPOR, but FOMO creeps in every now and again. Great show and appreciate any ideas.
Thank you, Joanne. Regular listener of the show, I believe. Great position to be in.
Yes.
LVR 55% on our own home, going to be mortgage-free in worst case 5 years.
3 to 5 years. That's great.
Yeah. And, dare I say it, great mindset. Want to buy
Yes.
2 or 3 properties, so wants to take on the world.
Yeah.
You've got to do it strategically, don't you?
You do.
I see so many people that the goal is to pay down our own home, which is great. It's an absolute it's a goal that everyone wants to achieve essentially, I think. But doing that in conjunction with getting equity out and recycling through to use that for investment properties is a powerful thing, I think, for the long term. So we want to be doing that ASAP. So it doesn't annoy me, but I look at a situation where someone's been paying down their mortgage for 10 years and then they come and speak to me and it's like, oh, now we want to use the equity to buy an investment property because we've got no mortgage. Well, why didn't you come to me 8 years ago when you actually had equity? So it's a message to everyone out there to say, get a valuation every year. Get a valuation, talk to your broker and say, how much can we lend? How much equity do we have in our own home to be able to then say, what levers can I pull? So Joanne's doing this in droves. She's just wanting to see which is the best way to go ahead. Now, is there much of a difference in what she's saying here?
Well, does she wait to pay down her own home or does she buy now?
Yeah, but if she's waiting, she's got so much opportunity cost gone missing.
I would go with the FOMO and do it right now.
The big question that people have got on this is if, let's say I'm paying it down in 5 years and it's going to cost me $5,000 a month to do that. They're saying, right, I can do that and then in 5 years wake up and go and invest. But if I invest now, it's going to cost me $2,000 a month to hold that property. So I'm actually now paying down my mortgage by only $3,000 instead of $5,000. Yes. That's probably that's where I feel she's going. Is like it's going to slow me down. Now, is that the outcome? Can we get a little bit more equity and say, can I use some of that equity for some holding costs? And can I continue to pay my $5,000 with my future earnings?
Okay.
I don't know. What do you think about that?
Well, I think depending on the type of asset you're buying and what you're buying, let's say it did cost a couple $100 a week to hold it. are you taking that? So you're saying you're taking money that what would you be paying down in this home? So this $200 a week, let's say it took $10,000 a year away from paying down your own home.
Yeah.
Would the asset that you're buying go up in value more than that? And I think historically it has.
Correct.
So I would just feel like, and we don't know what's going to happen in the next 12 months.
No.
However, if you look at the last 5 years, it would be very rare that a client would have said, I wish I'd paid down my home loan for that extra $100 a week rather than holding a property.
Yeah. No, I agree. You're right. It's like, okay, if it takes me, and I would do this assessment, Joanne, I would say, right, if I have to give, I'm just making up a figure, but $2,000 a month to this holding costs of the property, and then I get a tax return, of course. So what is the net cost? Versus, so now that might take me 8 years instead of 5.
Yeah, okay.
Or 10 years. Let's double it. 5 years and 10 years. Yeah. Is that a bad thing if I'm making 400 or 500 grand over here on an investment purchase? That's probably the question that she's got. And my thoughts would be, yeah, your FOMO is real at the minute, and going and using the bank's money, creating some good debt in your life, getting some income, and benefiting from that, but leveraging the bank's money to create a greater wealth outcome is, I think, my priority. I do get a lot of people that say, I just want that mortgage gone as soon as possible.
Especially when you're so close.
Yeah, that's right. So we can maybe do both if we potentially grab a little bit more equity and use as some holding costs, I don't know.
Yeah. I would look back at the last few years and maybe think about what you consider might happen in the next 12 months as well.
In terms of the property market, or?
Well, I think we've been saying for a little while that, there's a lot of incentives coming in January. I just think if I was teetering on whether to buy or not at the moment and had the ability to do so, I don't think I'd hold back in this little market that we've got at the moment.
Oh, so you know something that we don't?
I don't know. I'm just saying.
Fair enough.
There's just a lot of government incentives coming in January, and I would just, if I was thinking I've got everything I need to buy an investment property, I've got the mindset to do it, I've got the ability to do it, I've got the equity, would I do it now or would I wait? I would say I would prefer to do it now.
Generally speaking.
Before I had all that competition.
Correct. And we always say two things, funding and mindset.
Yeah.
When they're both aligned, go for it.
Yeah. Not if I wasn't planning on buying one, but if I was planning on buying an investment property, I'd prefer to do it sooner.
Yeah. And she wants to buy 2 to 3.
Yeah.
So let's get a start on that.
Yeah.
All right. Not financial advice,
No.
but just our opinion. Anonymous, my PPOR is mortgage free. Well done. And 2 other investment properties that have a rental yield at 7%, mind you. Now, whether that's gross or net, I presume it's gross. That's fantastic. Pretty much your holding cost in today's money would be neutral or even positive, right? So am I reading that we're not only mortgage free, but we've also got 2 investments that are mortgage free, or have they got loans? I don't know.
No, I'm not sure, but
Let's
they've got a good rental
go as
yield.
though the mortgage is free.
Yeah.
Like we've got no loan on our own home, but we've got loans on our investment properties. But they've got great yields, so they're probably not costing us anything. I'm 48, single without dependents. That's why. Right? That's where we went wrong, Rach. Had kids. Based on $850K budget, would I be better to get another IP, investment property, or investing in ETFs, considering the potential tax rules changes? What are the tax rule changes?
Let's get Glenn in here.
Well, any case, this is a really depends sort of conversation, isn't it? It's like, well, okay, I've got 850. Do I want a third investment property? Am I just this property nerd that all I do is property? Or do I need some exposure to other types of assets in my life? It really depends. I'm like, okay, for me personally, I'm like, okay, why not a third investment property? Because I love it and I understand it, I know it, and I trust it. Diversification is also really important. It's a key. It really depends on how you think you want to be structured in 10, 15, 20 years' time. And this is not a rule for everyone by any means. It's just me personally. I'm like, okay, my real estate does the heavy lifting in terms of its wealth creation. You buy something for 600 in 20 years' time, it's worth 1.5 or whatever it is. it's not giving me cash flow. My ETFs or my share portfolio, whatever, that can be the passive income stream for me, right? Not saying everyone does that, but I think it's understanding what they want out of their life in the next 10 to 20 years. Do they want high passive income? How much diversification do they want in their whole portfolio of wealth? And then making a decision from there.
And in that position, is getting maybe some financial advice a good idea?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's really just because you're looking at two sides of the coin, and a good financial advisor is going to say, right, you've got this on the table now. Where do you want to be in X amount of years? And which one's going to give you the best outcome for that long term? A not so good financial advisor will be saying, let's go down the just one sort of, So I think it's, you're probably right. Let's go and see someone and get on with their life.
Get some modelling out there. Dan says...
Oh, here we go.
He asked me to sing Achy Breaky Heart, which I'm not going to do. I will do it another time, though, absolutely. I just wanted to see if Pidge would know this one. Serious question. Pidge would know that song. You know what? He would know that song, Achy Breaky Heart. More from your genre. Serious question though. Investors talk about using equity from investment property 1 to buy investment property 2 without any physical cash input. How does this work with serviceability? As I understand that borrowing from investment property 1 to use as a 10% deposit for investment property 2 at 90%, if I can't make the math because surely serviceability becomes capped very quickly. Yet investors talk about 2, 3, 4, 5 plus properties they have with minimal deposits. Please explain and thank you.
Yeah, so thanks, Dan. Billy Ray Cyrus is not in the room today, but Rachel is.
You would have known that one.
Yes, knew that one. But this is up your alley in respect to servicing, isn't it?
Yeah, look, I would say you are correct. I would say most people buy their first investment property and most investment properties without any physical cash, especially if we're talking about the traditional sense. So the traditional investor, and I know it's changed recently, but the traditional investor has their own home, they get some equity in that property over time, and then they utilise that equity to borrow 100% plus costs for investment property 1, and then they tend to wait. They wait a little while, and this is the patience part of probably this generation changes from maybe the previous generations. But traditionally, we buy investment property 1 and wait to get a little bit of equity across that portfolio again, but also maybe wait until the rent in property 2, their investment property 1, has increased a little bit. So it is paying for itself, and then they go again, not putting any cash in. Now, I think in the current climate, people are a little less patient and they want things right now straight all away. The time. And I do think people are trying to buy more quickly than before. And so we do come up against this serviceability issue where I'm trying to buy property 2 or 3 before investment property 1 is actually paying for itself. And that's where you need the cash.
Absolutely. So question then, on the back of that, how important is the yield in my property versus the income/servicing in my personal life?
Yeah, well, it is important in the bank's calculators, but something to consider, Dan, is that the bank doesn't just have when you're borrowing again for the property 2 and 3, the bank doesn't just look about what you're actually physically putting into that property. They're looking at the principal and interest repayment, and traditionally, investors pay interest. They are looking at the principal and interest repayment over a shorter period of time, so 25 years, with 3% on top of the rate. So the buffer, so you kind of need, even though you might, I'm just going to use really bush math. Let's say you're putting $5,000 a year into a property. The bank might need $20,000 a year of your disposable income in the calculator. If that makes sense.
But if the rent in that particular property is giving him $10,000 a year, for example, that's going to increase his overall servicing in his life to borrow more money. Yeah,
that is right. So the more rent that you're getting for the property, the more, I guess, the easier it is on the bank servicing calculator. But looking at that shading is really important. But I think for people to get 3, 4 and 5 properties, sometimes it does take time, and sometimes you do need that dust to settle on that first investment property before you're going on to the second. I think when people are trying to buy 4 properties in a 3-year period, it can be really tough.
Slow down, Dan.
Slow down.
Is Rachel's message. But all right, so Dan doesn't want to hear that.
Yeah, he wants to go now.
He wants to hear Billy Ray Cyrus, and he wants to take action tomorrow.
Yeah.
So people talk about these trusts, these structures where we say, okay, we can hide a property in a trust. And it's essentially what they're doing, right?
Yeah.
So is that an option for someone?
Yeah, well, we've just done an episode on trusts. I think it's about to go up, but when we had an accountant come in and actually talk about that in a little bit more detail. Now, look, can you lock away a property in a trust and serviceability-wise you don't get capped out? Absolutely, you can. But the reality is you still need to pay that gap of the property. So even though that property, for the accountant to write a letter to say, hey, that property is paying for itself, it actually still has to be paying for itself. And sometimes that can take some time. So you might buy a property today and there might be, I don't know, $100 a week gap that you're putting in. And in 3 years' time, that rent might be at a level that you're not putting anything in. That's when the accountant can write a letter to say that property's covering itself. You can move forward without counting that into serviceability. Now, if that was in your personal name, that whole, I said that it's only costing you 5, but the bank's calculators want 20. Yeah. That other 15 would get ignored. Yeah. If that made sense for your next lot of property. So, yeah, it is something to consider.
But not all banks will offer that lending.
No. That's just a policy that some banks have, that they go, if you've bought this property in a trust back here and you've got an accountant's letter saying that particular property covers itself, you don't need to include that in the next property serviceability.
Yeah, okay. And random question, I think there's like 87 lenders or something in the country. How many of the main ones would you say do take that into account, do you know?
Yeah, the ones that do it well, I would say I've got 4 banks that do it well. Right. As in, they don't need to get things that the accountants don't want to sign.
Yeah, okay.
And they're good lenders.
Yeah.
Like it's not a strategy that, there's only like one bank that does it and they're charging extra interest. Yeah. It's nothing like that. I'm talking, blue chip bank with a great rate. But it's about whether there's things you need to consider when you're using different structures of whether it suits your overall strategy as well. But yeah, putting the 10% deposit in, I understand what people are saying where, serviceability will get capped at if I don't put the deposit in. But again, I'd put the deposit in, but using it to reduce my own home because that's still going to it's still going to increase your serviceability in a tax-effective environment.
Yeah. Way back when, there was a period there where it seemed as though once the banks had lent me like $2 million, they're like, we've capped out with this person. Is there it's much more complicated than that, obviously, but is there a figure where you say, okay, no, you can lend $5 million as long as the servicing is suffice, i.e. the rental income and your personal income year to year? Do they look at a total debt level and say, right, Rachel's got $3 million of debt here, regardless of how strong her servicing is, we're out?
No, I think with most of the lenders, and there's a few of the small lenders that don't want a certain amount of debt. They look at over $3 million and they go, that's actually not our comfort level. Or over 4 investment properties isn't our comfort level. But there's always going to be a bank that looks at it just on your overall income, that's your income, as well as your rental income. Minus the other debts that you've got. And it all goes into a calculator. Now, when people are saying it's harder to build property portfolios now than it was 10 years ago, they're absolutely right. So if I just rewind the clock 10 years, you could do 15 years interest only with a bank. I've still got clients in my portfolio that I put on 15 years interest only loans and they're happy as Larry sitting there for another 5 years until that finishes. Now, the other thing that happened back then though is that the banks looked at the interest only repayment in the calculator and that's all they used. Yeah. So in the servicing calculator, the bank would just use the interest only repayment. Now they're using principal and interest at a shorter term with another 3%. Yeah. So is it harder to build a portfolio now than 10 years ago? Absolutely. Is that something I think that has been engineered to slow investors? Yes, because what would have happened if they didn't do that? Look how fast the market's growing now. Imagine if there wasn't some levers pulled 7 years ago, 10 years ago to slow the market down.
Yeah, and also it's a little bit of responsible lending too, isn't it? Like there was a bit of an overhaul there. But on that as well, some lenders also only take a percentage of your rent coming in, don't they? Like 80% of your rent.
Yeah, well, it's always 80%. Some take less, but generally it's 80% of the rent. And really, you only get 80% when you think of what you pay for insurance and management costs and a bit of vacancy. It's probably a fair and reasonable assessment to use 80% of the rent.
Yeah. All right. Hope that helps, Dan. Love the approach to say, I want to build a portfolio, but it doesn't necessarily mean, and I say it all the time, number of properties mean nothing. It's quality in your portfolio that's performing for you regularly, and all roads lead to Rome. Like you can get 2 or 3 good quality assets and create a really strong wealth outcome out of that versus trying to have 6 or 7 that you have to manage and issues going on and different tenants and different property managers and everything else.
Yeah, and not having that cash flow in your life because you're trying to hold them all. Like they eventually will be cash positive. It's just a matter of time.
Yeah, absolutely. The other one, which is a story for another day, but we can get strategic in that, and we talked about the trust structure, but also like a joint venture.
Yes.
You say, well, okay, what am I lacking? Am I lacking deposit or am I lacking servicing? Okay, maybe can I get someone in that has really strong servicing that also might not have a deposit? Okay, we've got a match. Now we can go and buy an investment together. 50% of something is better than 100% of nothing.
Yeah, are you seeing a little bit more of that now?
Well, I just think back to my own portfolio.
Yeah.
50% of my portfolio is JVs.
Yeah, wow.
Right? And I don't know if I've ever actually told anyone that. So I've just told Australia. But I love a JV because so many times over the last 25 years, and that's every 5 minutes, I've wanted to go and invest and I haven't been able to. So I'm like, okay, left field, right field, how do I actually get a result right now?
Yeah.
I think it's something that, and I talk about it in my book, so we'll put the link in the show notes to the good old book, but I think it's something that if we have got a passion for building wealth and it is going to be in residential property, we just keep knocking doors down and looking at different options as opposed to the traditional way of 20% deposit, no LMI, principal and interest or interest only, and try and do that. It can be a slow approach depending on our situation.
Yeah. I hope that helps, Dan.
Very good, Dan. All right, looks like that is all we've got time for today. 6 quality questions answered. The questions was quality. I think the answers were quality, but you be the judge of that. In saying that, if you enjoy what you're listening to, obviously hit the subscribe button, but also feel free to pass it on to a friend, family member, anyone who you think you can benefit from this particular show.
Excellent. And feel free to watch us on YouTube.
Oh, yes, we are on YouTube. So hello to everyone out there on YouTube. So until next time, Rach. You've been Rachel, I've been John, and this is Property.
See you next week.
Bye.
Any information given in this podcast is for entertainment purposes only, and you should seek your own property advice before acting on anything you may hear in this podcast. If you want to start or advance your property education journey, John Pidgeon's book, Sort Your Property Out and Build Your Future, is available where all good books are sold, or via the link in the podcast show notes. Opinions or comments from any guests on the podcast are theirs and not those of the hosts, the publisher, or their respective license holders.